thank you for joining us. We've got a lot of AI content at the summit this year, but it's really good to see everyone out for this as we talk about what will be generative AI horizons and just in more general AI horizons. I'm Julia Klein. I'm a partner at Merch Capital, and I focus on investing in cloud and ML infrastructure. Over the past year, it's been incredible to see the explosion in AI. It's been a hot topic. There's been a lot of hype. I think we've seen foundation models come together, things like GPT, DALL-E, Stable Diffusion, and with ChatGPT, AI has now been at the fingertips of you and me and regular consumers out in the world. And so that's been obviously incredible for everyone to experience that. It's created a lot of hype, and it's also created, I think, a lot of anxiety. And so the top, questions on Google right now are, will AI replace my job? Will AI take over the world? So joining me today, we've got a panel of entrepreneurs and AI experts who will help us separate fact from fiction and talk a little bit more about what does the next 5 years look like, what does the next 10 years look like, and what's on the AI horizon. So I'm here today with Priya from ASAPP. She's CTO there and a technology leader and AI expert. I'm here with Chris, who is the co-founder and CEO of Runway ML, with Kevin, the founder and CEO of Parallel Domain, and Shane, who is the president of Jasper. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here today. The last year has been a crazy, crazy time. And so to kind of just take a poll of the audience, how many people here have heard about generative AI? How about before the summit? Still a lot of hands. I would reckon that there would be far fewer hands if you asked last year at this time. So obviously a lot has happened in the past year. But does anyone kind of want to level set for us? And maybe Priya, if you want to just give us a little bit about what is generative AI 101, and kind of talk us through where this technology came from and how we got here seemingly so quickly.
Yeah. Thank you, Julia. Good morning, everyone. What an interesting topic for the day. As much the buzz is catching up to us, it's not something which was just happening in the last few recent years. In the 50s and 60s, we all did rule-based classification. That's how we started working with data and creating computer systems. And after that, we started to apply the statistical techniques where we did the data classification techniques, and we started relying a little bit on machines. And after that, we said, God, we are generating so much data, and we need to rely on neural networks. Scientists started to mimic human behavior so we can get better handling large volumes of data. That's when we had CNNs and GANs, et cetera, which was the foundational architecture of transformers, which led to what we see as ChatGPT today, or in short, generative AI or large-scale language models. So it just did not happen overnight. It's the long years of research, and also what's made it possible for all of us to be able to take advantage is the compute power, because back then the cost of compute was ridiculously high. We couldn't afford to do it. Today, it is possible for the technology giants, as well as, we are a startup, and anyone could actually generate multi-billion models at a reasonable cost and still could solve a very generic problem and a very specific problem. So today we are at a point where generative AI has come to bear for all of us, and we'll get to talk more about it.
Amazing. Well, thank you for that overview. And all of you are working with AI and generative AI in different ways. If you could all just give a little bit about your companies, how you're working with generative AI. And I think we have a division on the panel here between sort of text and more of an image-based generative AI. So maybe we can start with Shane and Priya, who are working more on the text side, and then we can go with Chris and Kevin, who are working, I know, more within the imagery space. Anyone can start.
All right, well, that sounds great. Thank you. Hey, everyone. I'm Shane Orlick. I'm the president at Jasper. Jasper is an AI platform that helps creatives and businesses do better work. So our whole goal in life is to take away the mundane task. We've all had that pit in our stomach of staring at a blank screen, knowing you've got to instantly, spontaneously be creative. we want to take that feeling away and get you started. So our goal is to do 60 or 70% of the mundane slog of being creative so that you can focus the 30% on your magic and really updating that content and making it speak. We've been around, Priya, same 2 years. We've been doing this, actually a little bit over 2 years. 6 months ago, we were probably working with a departmental, like somebody in marketing or somebody in sales or somebody in CS. It's been incredible to see this momentum and shift in the enterprise and how they're thinking about AI and how they're thinking about the benefits of bringing AI into the enterprise. And so that's probably the biggest shift that we're seeing right now is enterprises trying to figure out how generative AI is going to impact their whole entire organization and how they could do better with, with the people they have.
Priya?
I'll double click more on the unstructured data or the text data. I mean, we are not all looking to understand ChatGPT or generative AI on how we could write me an essay or how we could write poetry. We all are trying to solve real business problems, and that's what we focus at ASAPP. As some of you have interacted with us in the last couple of days, ASAPP is the AI contact center solution. And here, enterprises are trying to understand conversations which is happening between an agent and a customer. What is this conversation about? What is the customer saying? How can I solve this much better? What are the right recommendations? Can I write notes in a much more effective way? Can I really resolve the problem as the first point of contact? All this is unstructured data. In order to be able to understand the natural language processing and to be very specific to that context, that's how we apply generative AI. We train large-scale language models very specific to that domain. If it's a contact center problem related to a telco or to a healthcare or to a travel industry, so we leverage this technology for a real business problem.
Great.
Kevin and Chris?
Hi, everybody. My name is Kevin McNamara, founder and CEO at Parallel Domain. We are a synthetic data generation platform. What that really means is we use software and simulation and generative AI to create or generate data that our customers then use to train and test machine learning models. So we focus a lot on image, video, sensor data generation. And our customers are those that are trying to build autonomous vehicles or delivery drones or mobile computer vision applications. When you need to use a sensor to perceive the world around you, our platform generates that kind of data for training and testing those models. I think to tie back to something Priya said earlier around defining generative AI, one of the huge leaps forward we've seen, even just in the past 6 months, is that not only most of our customers, but most of the applications we've used AI for in the past couple of years have been more around making decisions, classifiers, object detectors, AI that tends to take an input, make a decision, and give you a very discrete decision output. One of the big leaps forward now is that AI has become, in many ways, generative, and it's now generating content, right? And that is a total shift for, I think, both us, our customers, and a lot of the businesses that surround this space, where AI can now actually create images and text and things that are actually much more useful or maybe much more rich than just a yes or no decision or a confidence score on something. So I'm really excited to talk today about some very tangible use cases where we're using generative AI to create data that helps cars better recognize people. It helps drones better tell the difference between your front yard and your driveway, or maybe helps mobile computer vision applications detect people and faces and things like that. So there's lots of very real and tangible use cases for generative AI today, and excited to talk about that.
Chris?
A quick intro on my end. I'm Chris. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of Runway. Runway is a applied AI research company that's been pioneering research in the generative domain for the last 4 or 5 years. We work a lot in multimodal systems, so images, videos, audio, and the combination of those. We've been working on stuff like gradient diffusion. We also invented stable diffusion, and now Gen 1, which is a video generation model. We work a lot in media, entertainment, advertising, creative films, really trying to push forward the boundaries of creativity. I'm so excited to chat more about what's going on in the space.
Awesome. Thank you all. So I mentioned, right, we've got a lot of fact and fiction and myths out there about generative AI. And so I wanted to play a little bit of a game here to maybe help dispel some of the rumors and confirm some of the truths. So I'll throw a couple of things out here, and I'll ask our panelists to state whether it's fact or fiction. And if you really want to straddle the line and say a bit of both, you're allowed, but we'll see. We'll do it case by case. So first, ChatGPT has passed the bar exam. Fact or fiction?
Fiction. I proved it. I asked ChatGPT.
Elaborate.
It was a funny question. I played with it. I tried it with ChatGPT. It says, I'm not a physical body, so I can pass examinations. So it's a fiction.
It is, in fact, partially fact. They have ChatGPT did pass parts of the bar exam. Not the full exam, not yet, at least, but parts of it. So it is powerful, but you're correct. Not quite that powerful yet. Second one to throw out there. The ChatGPT site has been viewed roughly 2 times for every person in the US. Meaning, for every individual.
I believe that. 300 people in the US-ish.
300
And
million.
they've got 100 or 300 million, and they've got 100 million people they say are using chat, so that has to be true.
That is true. You are correct.
All right.
So yes, as you can see, it's been an absolute explosion since it launched about 6 months ago, publicly at least. And it's been incredible, the extent of the reach, and why everyone here today has heard probably, for the most part, about generative AI. Third question here. There are now more than 250 generative AI-focused companies.
I believe that, yeah. It maybe even seems like a low bound.
You are correct.
Yeah.
There are more than 250. So as you can tell, massive market, tons of opportunity. And we're talking to some of the leaders today in this space. Okay, so now we're getting a little more into the, let's call it nitty-gritty here. Generative AI will replace people's jobs. Fact or fiction?
I would say fact with an asterisk of, somebody said this the other week, I really like this viewpoint. I think it will be, generative AI not necessarily replacing lawyers per se, but rather lawyers who learn how to use generative AI better, replacing lawyers that don't. And so I don't think, especially at Parallel Domain, we look at both generic AI and generative AI as an augmentation to human capability rather than a replacement. So I really like that viewpoint of people will undoubtedly use this technology for massive amounts of applications, and they will very likely kind of surpass and replace the people that don't learn how to use it.
Interesting. One for Chris, since you are specifically in this space. Generative AI is a threat to creative.
Definitely not. I think there's a common misconception about understanding or seeing the systems as a zero-sum game where like you do nothing or the system does everything for you. The truth is that from a creative perspective, all creative outputs are the process of iterations and continuous feedback loops. And so what the systems are really good at is they're some sort of like a companion or a system that can work together with you to help you achieve more, faster, better, and sometimes at a fraction of the cost. And every major technological disruption comes with changes, and this perhaps might be the biggest technological disruption we've seen in the last couple of years. And things are going to change radically. The only difference is that it's going to change faster than what we saw from the internet or mobile or cloud. And it's going to change in a very positive way because it's going to allow, I would say, creative specifically for us, but I think industries at large, to do things faster, better, and also to get those kind of workflows to more people because it's a more convenient technology to use than traditional systems specifically in the creative side of things. And so really excited about what's already happening, what will continue to happen, and things are going to accelerate really fast.
Yeah.
All right. Now a final question. Generative AI is projected to be a $100 billion market by 2030.
Probably more.
Y'all are
Yeah,
operating in it, so
more.
you should say fact here.
Yeah.
But yes, and that is a fact, and probably why we're having so much discussion about it today. And throughout the course of this summit, it is expected to be a massive market, and we're just scratching the surface now. So thank you all for indulging the game. And moving on to a fun kind of opening question here. that was actually given to me by ChatGPT when I asked for interesting questions to ask AI experts. And that is, if you could use generative AI to create any type of content, regardless of feasibility or practicality, what would you create and why? Anyone can start us off.
Yeah, I'll start with it. I think generative AI, as Chris was saying, is very useful in solving generic problems, right? It's good at many generic things. So scenarios where we can get a point of view or a summary of a book, where accuracy of information doesn't matter much, bias is not going to disrupt us or point us, off, doesn't matter, and then the real-timeness of information is not of criticality, because you all know this got trained, it's not real-time, it got trained on data which is less than 2021 worth of data. So if these three factors are okay, then ChatGPT or generative AI could be used quite a bit. It's very specific to ChatGPT. That's where I would use. So this is like understanding about a specific concept and having a point of view which is not going to make me a critical business decision. So that's where I would use ChatGPT.
Got it.
I
Anyone
think
else?
if I had a magic wand, totally unrelated to what parallel domain does, but I think inventing medication, inventing a cure for cancer or finding a way for generative AI to put together chemicals and molecules in a way that humans have never figured out, I think could just have a massive impact from medicine all the way through to genetically modifying crops and food to help feed the world. I think there's probably a lot of combinations of genes and chemicals and things that we as humans are never going to discover by ourselves. So I think if AI can help do that, that would be incredible.
Yeah, I get excited about talking to founders that are starting AI companies for mental health, where being able to give mental health advice and feedback to hundreds of millions of people, like at scale, where it's actionable, active advice that is probably in a lot of cases, if we do this right, going to be better than even talking to a therapist, which they don't have money or access to. So that's a great area.
These are all awesome answers. I think, and on the horizon, hopefully within the next 10 years, bringing us a little bit back to today and to kind of business. What are you all seeing as some of the most interesting business applications of generative AI, and where are companies starting with it?
You want to start?
Sure. Well, Chris, actually the video that Runway came out with, where you could just take a script and create a video and in real time erase images in the video or change the backdrop or change the person in the video, that totally blew me away. I sent that to every single person I knew and said, this is the future. So that absolutely brought the power of this home. I mean, you can create a script, film a script, update it, change it, share it with everybody.
Yeah.
It's absolutely incredible. For us at Jasper, we get really excited about the ability to personalize the content. So right now, we're sort of in what we consider Act 1. We've been doing this now for 2 years, but it was that same idea where we exposed a magic trick to the world and showed them how you could generate content off of a prompt. Create a 500-word blog on why Montgomery conference is the one conference to attend if you're going to pick one, and it writes that content. Absolutely. That's why we're here. That was sort of Act 1. Act 2 now is quickly becoming more personal to you. So how do you make that content less generic and much more personalized, on brand, on point? And so that's what we're seeing focus. That's where we're focused as a company now, and we're starting to see the world sort of wake up to that. But it's still early days.
I think a good way to think about, I guess, the impact it will have, and we were chatting about how big the market will be. I'm really looking forward for a time where we're going to stop referring to generative AI or companies that are AI-based or AI-native, in the same way that we don't refer to companies that use the internet today as internet companies. Every single company right now, the whole economy in the world runs on the internet, and you stop thinking about it. It just becomes so ingrained in how you do business and how you communicate and how you operate and how you build value over time. The first natural approach towards understanding technology is to label it. So we call companies AI companies, right? But as soon as this starts to get more embedded into everything we do, it's just going to be so natural that we're going to stop referring to it. And so that's why I think really like the market cap of this is not just like a couple of billion or trillions, it's like basically the whole economy will be massively disrupted by this. And from a creation perspective or from a innovation perspective, what's really interesting is to think about not what we can do that we already are doing better, but what new affordances the systems will allow us to do that we haven't even like thought of before because they weren't even possible. And the way I like to think about it is like perhaps we've been using horses to move from point A to point B, and there's ways of improving those horses to be faster. There's better food you can give them. You can breed them better. But we're coming up with a car, and the car will allow you to do things that no horse will allow you to do, right? And it doesn't work in the same way. You can't put two cars together and get a third car, right? It doesn't work like that, but it works in a different way, and it allows you to do things much more efficiently and in a completely new kind of like set of like ways. And so really excited for really kind of like moving towards that new space of things that I think we haven't even yet realized we're going to be able to do, and the value that we'll derive for that is going to be massive.
One area that we've been seeing a little bit of that, not just a faster horse, but a whole new thing like a car, is in a lot of our customers are ML and AI developers. And the way they used to work with data was to go out to the real world, collect data, get that data labeled, store it, and then go train a model in a kind of an offline fashion. One of the things that generative AI is really promising for is being able to react to how a model is learning as it's actually learning. And so we've been able to introduce active learning cycles, for example, where a lot of our customers are working on things like autonomous driving. Maybe you're working on pedestrian detection algorithms to make sure the car can see somebody that's jaywalking. As that algorithm is learning, you're validating on every training iteration where it's weak and where it's strong. Well, now if you have an ability to feed back those weak examples into a generative system that can create more examples of those cases for you on the fly, then machine learning algorithms can get much better, much faster, and the humans become more shepherds of that process rather than data collectors and labelers. So that's just one example where we've seen like very real application of generative AI actually helping in kind of enterprise ML development use cases that is totally different than the way I thought machines were going to learn if you asked me 3 or 4 years ago.
Yep, it's interesting. We all heard, the software revolution, and software is eating the world, and everything became software, and now perhaps the next wave, we're at an inflection point where everything will become AI-based, and that will be, to your point, Chris, it's kind of going to be table stakes as opposed to something that puts you in a separate category. So it's a really interesting take on it.
Yeah, I think we're seeing that, right, every single day. Slack, Salesforce, HubSpot, every company is coming out with at least a press release that talks about how they're embedding ChatGPT into their product, and they're now an AI company, right? Like we have these AI-first companies, I think us, and I think they're the traditional software companies that are trying to figure out how to put AI in their product because like, hey, look at whatever company stock popped 20% when they did a press release. Yep. And we actually have gotten a bunch of enterprise deals that way, so I'm not complaining about it. CEOs calling us like, I have my earnings call next Thursday, can I do a press release? So we're seeing that. I think we have a very unique advantage, the AI-first companies though, because we don't have any constraints around how we're thinking about the problem. We're thinking of a customer, here's what they're trying to do. If you remove all barriers around the artificial architecture of how you've designed your software application, how would you solve this problem? And we're able to look at it from a totally different perspective, as opposed to trying to just put ChatGPT into my CRM tool to, create better subject headers. Like we want to be able to create a world where you're creating content once, it's on brand, it's on message, it then gets reformatted and sent out to whatever system you're working in, and then it's able to collect analytics and bring it back and help you get better content and innovate and continue to iterate. And so I think that's where you're going to see AI go, is around really this like amazing ability to personalize and make your life better, as opposed to just this artificial like appendage that's put on software. And this is this first wave. I think what's going to happen is what we saw is just because you have AI doesn't mean people are going to use it. They don't even know how to use it. They don't know what it can do. Look at Siri. Siri's probably awesome. I don't know how to use Siri, so we don't really use Siri. And so it's all about like helping our customers understand the capabilities of AI and the use cases and sort of guiding them through this in the beginning until they get more comfortable with the technology. And I totally agree, Chris. It's just going to be part of how we live our life. It's not going to be a thing anymore.
Yep.
Yeah.
Priya, maybe you can add a little color. I know you're obviously at ASAPP, which is using AI to kind of solve a problem that has long been tackled in many different ways around customer experience, customer service. How are you kind of using AI to do it differently?
Yeah. Solving and personalizing, automating and augmenting the agents so they can show up at their best in front of the customer. It's not about how long you talk to the customer, it's about how are you actually listening to the real problem and are you able to solve the customer's problem. That's the hardest problem. And it doesn't matter if it's a 40-minute conversation or a 10-minute conversation, you knowing about the customer and you gathering all the information and you able to give the right insights at that very point in time, that's what makes it as a real data intensive and an AI problem. So you need compute power, which is happening as we do it in real time, and you need every smallest thing which makes the agent at its best. So it's all about, you asked a question, will AI displace people? No, it's about elevating human performance. In this case, it's agent and delivering a rich customer experience. And AI has enabled us to do a couple of things, which might be a takeaway to a lot of us in the audience as well. AI has enabled us to try this technology much more easily. It's not just the power of AI, it's about our ability to imagine the user experience in a much different way. Things we were able to do before, not because we use a transformer technology or a neural network technology or something more complex. The fact that you don't have to program a conversation flow between two parties who's talking, that's amazing. That's the innovation, which is nothing to do with what models we use behind. It's more, the model is one part of it, the experiential aspects which we do around it and what data that you have is allowing us to completely reimagine the customer experience space. That's what we do at ASAPP.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing, yep. And then are there any, I guess, pieces that need to be in place for companies to be able to effectively utilize AI internally, right? Generative AI or just AI, in terms of automation and traditional thinking around AI?
I think from a business perspective, the adoption curve will continue to go up, mostly because of sure, like technical breakthroughs that are going on and that will continue to go on, and models are getting really good, and they're crossing the chasm of research and toys to production ready systems. But I think the most important model that has been updated collectively is our own mental models about how we understand the technology. That requires time and exposure to something that's just new. Explaining, when we were building Runway early on 5 years ago, explaining to an ad agency or a production studio the idea that you can generate an image or a video by typing text was so away of the realm of what they thought that meant, right? And the way you could understand it was well, is this working in the same way? Are you rendering this with any existing software? Is it collaging images from existing databases? And the truth is that it's not. It just works completely different. And for you to really understand what that means, you need to use it. You need to be exposed to it. You need to understand this idea of driving images or content or stories or videos with language. And I think for the last 4 years, and I think what happened over the last 6 months in particular, has been collectively there's been a shift, and we've crossed that chasm where people finally get exposure to it and understand it, and everyone can go and use generative models for any type of creation. And so from a business perspective, that really drives forward adoption internally, because you have to do less of the convincing internally about why and how, because everyone already uses it. And so it's a really exciting time because there's a lot yet to be built that hasn't even been built, but our mental models have finally kind of catch up to where we are.
Yep.
Yeah, something else I would add to that is tying back a little bit to what Shane said. We see companies struggle when they take the approach of let's just sprinkle some AI on that problem and see if it helps, versus really making a deep commitment to integrating both standard AI and generative AI approaches to the problems they're trying to solve. On the enterprise side, which is where we tend to work a bit more, there is a slightly different need for fine-tuning and control and precision relative to the consumer side. So I think a lot of what Shane and Chris have been talking about brings kind of creativity and control to consumers who may want to express themselves. But on the enterprise side, we're finding very often the off-the-shelf models like Stable Diffusion or ChatGPT might not provide the precision and the control and kind of the safety guards that an enterprise would need for really working on kind of heavier weight applications, whether that's autonomous driving or banking or insurance, whatever it is. So in a lot of cases, the way to get that control is through proprietary data and through fine-tuning models for your specific use case. So I would say one area where we're seeing like a requirement for enterprises to get a lot of value from generative AI today is the ability to obtain or generate that proprietary data you need to go fine-tune models for your use case. Otherwise, you're going to end up with, like with image generation, for example, you're going to end up with like a lot of images that look like they came from Google image search. But if you're an enterprise working on manufacturing or autonomous driving, you actually need something much more specific and precise than that. So being able to fine-tune a generative model to actually handle that use case for you, we've seen is kind of a prerequisite to extracting a lot of enterprise value.
Yeah, and it's choosing the right customers to focus on. I mean, there's so many shiny toys right now in AI. It's picking the companies that are committed to AI and understand the investment that it's going to take to be successful, and then partnering with them to go all in on both sides and be able to deliver that vision. It's tough to just sprinkle into the enterprise because it's hard to do it that piecemeal, like by having a couple champions, but at the same time, most enterprises aren't ready yet for that big enterprise conversation with the CIO around what AI in the enterprise looks like. And so it's really finding that balance and the right people to work with. That's been our big challenge.
All right, switching gears a little bit here. I know all of you are building companies, right, in this very fast-moving space. Obviously, a year ago, maybe not as many hands would have gone up for even hearing about generative AI or recognizing what it is. And so, in this kind of rapidly evolving space where we now have 250 plus companies, how do you go about building something that's differentiated and that takes into account how quickly technology is moving? And what are maybe some of the challenges there and how you solve them?
We always tie it back to data, especially as a data generation company, but what we're seeing is being able to condition and fine-tune models on some form of proprietary data is a huge differentiator, right? Anybody can grab these open source foundational models and generate the default data off the shelf. But if you have some proprietary or privileged information that enables you to fine-tune a model specifically for a use case, you can provide massive value. And so one of the biggest things we're focused on is what inputs can we provide to these models that nobody else can provide through things like 3D simulation and conditioning on depth and semantic segmentation that actually allows us to generate data that is much more bespoke and unique for people's use cases than you would get if you just grabbed the model off the shelf. So I think data can be a real moat here for people.
Yeah. I think every company is different and every business is different. For us, what makes the most sense, and it's a muscle that we build internally, is building and innovating and inventing foundational models like latent diffusion and stable diffusion and Gen 1 and Gen 2, which are kind of the baseline systems for a lot of applications and value that's been derived on the open source and research side of things. And then part of what we do is that kind of like lift off and work and in innovation, but then productionalizing those for like real world applications is like the next stage. And that's a full stack approach, but there are companies that live in between from training and infrastructure to just API usage. I think every company is different, and there's enough value for a lot of things to emerge in that stack.
It's such an important question because today we're talking about generative AI, and a lot of us are, pinning to ChatGPT, but we have had Lambda, we had Flan T5, and we had Cohere yesterday talking about it. We have a whole bunch of them, and a lot of us have built models on top of the old BART models and et cetera. So this existed for quite a bit of time. To really stand in the market is the approach that ASAPP has taken is there are a multitude of things from a software architecture level. There is a continuous AI innovation that you can do. How do you bring accuracy, price per performance, et cetera? So that continues to be an innovation. On top of it, how could you bring the data, as Kevin talked about? Because domain-specific data is always valuable, because not everybody has access to it. And continuing to bring in that safe haven for that particular industry, and then the ease of use, because as much we talk about it, there is always going to be an entry barrier of how you can use it in production. It's about packaging these powerful machine learning models into rich user experiences. So we continue to make sure we are not just differentiating in one layer, bringing the right AI models with the specific context of that particular industry and packaging it as a real service or a user experience. That's what we focus on.
Yeah, awesome. You know, I think for us, it's just obsessing about our customers. So we're in a unique position where we have the model layers that we're all talking about, right? These LLM layers. We're this application layer that's sitting on top of multiple models. And so the thing that's been most interesting about AI for me is that it doesn't feel like any of us are competitors. We're all trying to just raise AI to this next level, and it's such a massive market. There's so much space that we're all just finding our own paths. And so Cohere or Anthropic or Stability or OpenAI, like they all serve different purposes. And so for us at Jasper, we have this Jasper AI engine, which is able to pool and pick and choose different models for different outputs. And so some models are better for some outputs. We have our own models that are better for some outputs. And so for us, it's just been the ability to really obsess on how do our customers want to use the tool and what output are we providing for them. And so that's been our northern light. So as hard as it is, we try our best to ignore all the press, the latest, buzzy thing that gets launched today. Like we're really trying not to focus on what seems cool today, but really focus on what's going to be beneficial and impactful 6 months from now, 12 months from now, and go to, skate to where the puck's going. So that's been our kind of secret sauce.
Awesome. Well, I know we're getting close to time here, but I want to ask you all one more question, and I'm going to do a little combination here. So last year at this time, I said, where will we be in 10 years with AI? And I think that maybe was too much of a time horizon, because I don't think anyone would have guessed where we would be today with AI. And so I'm going to say, what do you, in your viewpoint, view as kind of one of the biggest challenges that is solvable in AI, and what are we going to do over the next year to solve it?
I'm a data person, so there was a point in time where how we started normalizing big data became a reality. So AI will become pretty pervasive and commoditized and democratized to every one of us. I don't think so. We need to wait for years, Julia. I'm pretty bullish that it's going to happen much earlier.
Well, I sincerely hope that you're right.
Yeah, I second that. I think we'll just, this will be table stakes for everyone. It will be just a natural way of doing everything. And that's going to happen within the next couple of years.
One of the biggest challenges we see is development time in the machine learning world. If you need to create a model or an AI system to go do something for you, whether it's drive a car or fly a drone or whatever that is, developing that model to a point of performance that you can actually deploy your product is still a really time-consuming process. And that iteration cycle of getting data, labeling that data, training your model, testing your model, tweaking things, and then redeploying, that's still extremely slow. I think generative AI has an opportunity to be a massive tailwind in helping shortcut that data acquisition cycle, which is still the slowest part of ML development in general. And so I'm very excited about the opportunity generative AI presents in terms of shortcutting the data acquisition cycle, but there's still a long way to go, and that is still where our customers spend almost all of their time, is data acquisition and data engineering. So I'm excited to see how that will be very different when we come back a year from now.
Yeah, I think that AI will just be alongside us. It'll be personalized to us again. I know I keep saying this, but I really truly think that'll be, I think a lot of these early AI projects are not going to be successful. I'm an old CRM person from way back in the day, and I remember 10 years of CRM projects failing. I think they're too generalized, and if it's not personalized, it's not going to be successful. So I think we'll see a lot of that, and I think we'll see a smaller group of people that are solving real problems for their customers. Those will be the companies that we're all talking about, and a lot of the chatter and noise, I think, will go away as the hype cycle passes. And I do think there's going to be a fight for talent, and the most talented people in this space are going to go to those best companies, and that's going to help elevate all of us, I think, to that next level to solve real problems for customers, as opposed to just a great press release.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you all for coming out and sharing your perspectives on AI horizons, what's happening now, what's happened in the past year, and what's happening next. And so hopefully this time next year we'll have new exciting things to share within the space of AI. And we'll see you all. Thank you for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you all then.